going to show you how I felt my cowboy hats today. So first I'll cover supplies. To begin with, you'll need a hat mold of your choice. Resist pattern, which is made out of heavy plastic. And you'll need a restaurant tray, 3 to 4 ounces of roving, a wetting agent, which is just water, and a drop or two of dish soap, and some soap, and a towel. Okay, so the first step is to split your fiber into two. So if you had about 4 ounces, you're going to have 2 ounces and 2 ounces. Once you do that, you're going to split again into 4 little piles for each of the layers. So now I'm going to take my resist pattern, and since this is my tray, I went ahead and traced it so that it's a little easier for me. And then I have the dotted lines, which is 2 inches out from the resist pattern, which are going to be my seams where I'm going to be able to put the sides together. Okay? Okay, so now we're going to start our first layer, and since I have my little lines, I'm going to go ahead and use that. And the way you're feathering is to just kind of put your hand and overlap it, and then pull gently. Okay, the roving should just kind of come apart like that. Okay, I'm just going to keep layering. Oops. You want to pat it down a little bit as you do this. So the fiber I'm using is a prime fiber from one of our alpacas we used to have, and it was processed at the mill. It's, I think, 90% Suri, and I added 10% merino. If this is one of your first times working with felting, wet felting, especially hats, the 10% merino will be a little more forgiving. Felting Suri is a little tricky, so the little bit of merino will definitely help. Okay, so I've got half there, and you're just going to keep going. Okay, so I did my first layer, and I'm now going to kind of look for little holes and just give it a little extra, any light or thin spots. You just sort of feel for it or look for it. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So once you get that first layer, now you're going to do your second layer, and if you were going left to right, now you're going to go top to bottom. Okay, so I'm going to start over here, and just keep feathering away. Okay, so I finished my second layer, and now I'm going to go do my third layer, and again I'm going to go from left to right, or right to left. Okay, so now the third layer is done, so now I'm going to do my last layer, which is my fourth layer, and I'm going to just keep layering away, making sure there are no thin spots, and if there are, you want to just add a little extra. Okay, so after your fourth layer, we're going to do a little bit of dry felting to help it come together. You're just going to put your hand down and sort of wiggle it back and forth, and you do that for the whole area. After the dry felting, I just put my resist pattern back on, and I sort of check to make sure I'm about 2 inches out. If there's any that seem a little too big or too much, I'll just sort of pull it out to make it about 2 inches, and I do that. And then after you do that, remember the other little pile you had? You do the same exact thing for the other side of the hat. Okay, so now that you're done with 2 sides and probably a little tired already, we're going to start putting it together. So we're going to try to wet the part that's got the resist pattern on it and keep the seams dry at this point. I'm just using water with a drop or 2 of dish soap. You don't want this to be bubbly. You want it to be a little slippery and wet, but not soapy. Oh, hang on, let me just start. So I sort of outline it. and I'm pushing it and making sure it stays, and I'm just going to wet it down. Okay, so now that this whole area underneath is wetted down and you've kept your seams dry, this part is going to be the opening of your hat. So we want to tuck it underneath and wet it down completely. And it's a little harder to do. Okay, so now that I've got most of this tucked under and wet, I'm going to cover it again and get ready for the next process. Okay, so the next part is always the part that makes me a little nervous. You're going to fold the seams, the dry seams in at the line. You're going to kind of press it so there's a nice little line right here so it doesn't float off on you. Okay. Now, I'm going to take the other half, lift it up, and I'm going to be putting it right on top. Okay, very carefully. Okay, I think I want it a little higher. I'm going to check and make sure that the seams are still folded in. Okay, that's looking good so far. Whew. Okay. Okay, I placed my resist pattern back on so I have a better idea and I can double check to make sure that everything's matching up before I start wetting it down. Okay, from here, same process. You can take this off and eyeball it, or you can just sort of be cautious and make sure it stays within. So once it's just all wetted down, we're going to flip this whole thing over. So having this resist pattern here is going to help you do this without making it fall apart. You want to make sure you get the other side. Okay. And there. Okay, I lost a little bit, so I'm just going to clean that up. Okay. After it's flipped, you're going to look for the resist pattern, which is going to be in the center, and then the bottom part at the watermark, you're going to tuck it in under the resist pattern. You kind of do it the same way where you wet it down. And you do it, hold on one second, you do it all the way. Okay. And once it's tucked in, and this is a little trickier, just make sure it's under the resist pattern so you still have an opening. And then you're going to carefully fold the seams over and wet that down. Okay, you might need to go get a refill. Okay, so if there's any excess water, you can squeeze those out, but I like to make sure they're not sticking to my hand. Then I'm going to start the sew process. So there are different ways to do it. You can just dribble soapy solution, or I just like to get my hands really soapy and just gently kind of press and rub. Very gently. You don't want to move any fiber around. Just really gently. So I'm just patting it down there. Kind of like that. And if you're using Suri Alpaca, you want to use cooler water at all times. For some reason, it seems to work better. So this is about 5 minutes of sort of just gently, I don't know, moving my hands in circles. I'm very aware of the seam since we put it this way. I'm definitely not going to want to go that way. I want to keep it kind of going inwards, and also here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over so I can do the other side for a little bit. See how that's still not quite there. Okay, so now that I flipped it to the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. Gently put a little bit of soap. So let's see, this one I think went that way, so I can go this way. I'm going to have it just wet enough that it won't stick to my hand and soapy enough that it won't stick to my hand and peel off. So right now that would be a little too dry, so I might just a little bit there. Now I'm going to do this for another 5 minutes. Okay, so another 5 minutes went by, and this side's looking a little bit better, but it's going to still need quite a bit more. We're going to flip it back to the other side, and I'm still seeing the seams, so I'm going to add a little bit more on my hands, and see, I don't want that, so I'm going to cut it down. And as you do this, depending on the fiber, even the same Suri Alpaca, it can take different times. Okay, so once you start getting it to how you like it, you're going to start putting your hand in and doing the inside as well, very gently and very mindful of the seams. Okay, so another 5 minutes went by. This is the first side we worked on. I'm going to go ahead and flip this again. This is getting firmer, but we have to keep getting that. I'm going to work on this another 5 more minutes or so, and every once in a while I'm going to check inside. Usually good to have soapy hands and just sort of make sure that the loose things are getting felted in. Okay, so another 6 or so minutes, and I'm starting to see some changes, but I'm still not quite happy with some of the loose fiber on the other side or underneath. I still have my resist in here, not quite ready to take that out, so I'll just keep doing it a little bit longer. Okay, so now after what seemed like maybe 20-30 minutes plus a little break, it's starting to come together. I'm not seeing those little pieces flying around, and it's time for me to take out the center resist and work on this a little more. Now I can rub it a little harder. So now I'll just kind of hold it between my hands and work it a little bit harder, especially the seams. Make sure that's nice and tough. So I'll do this again for, we'll see, quite a little while. Okay, so I think I did it for another 7 or so minutes, and I was just rubbing all around, and I'm feeling that it's getting stronger and the texture's changing. It's a lot sturdier. So now I'm going to go wash it. Okay, so now that it's been washed and rinsed, so there's no soap in it, and at this point you can actually shock it a little bit with hot water. And now I'm going to put it over the hat mold. So let me see if I can get this. So I pretty much just start working on it, and I start stretching it like this and centering it. And then I'm going to take soap and start rubbing it, and I'll show you what it looks like in a few minutes. So I'm working from the top down, and you can kind of see it's a little bit of work, but you're getting the wrinkles out and trying to fit it on this hat mold. So a little bit more. Okay, so it's getting more stretched out, but there's still quite a bit of wrinkles I have to work on. So I just kind of keep going until I get all the wrinkles out. Okay, so it's been stretched, and now I'm going to trim off. You can kind of see the little bit of extra. So I'm going to trim this off and then sort of felt the edges clean again. So after I do that all around, I'm going to kind of clean up the edges. After you like it, you shape it the way you like it. Now you actually have to pull it off and wash everything so that we can put it back on and let it dry for the finishing touch. So this has been rinsed, no soap. That has been rinsed, everything's been rinsed, and I'm going to stretch it one last time. This time it should be a lot easier. Okay, it's coming together now. And once I get it to how I like it, I'm going to let it dry. And then once it's dry, I can show you how to add the embellishments, wire, and the headband on the inside, and also a hat stiffener if you want to make it a little, to keep it shaped, to help keep its shape. I'm going to take my roving and I'm going to just needle felt it like this. The way I'm going to do it, since I only have a rectangular foam, is to kind of carefully slide it under. And my first pass, I'm just going to go real fast so I can position it. Oops. There are better soft hat forms that you can use that would make it much easier, but I only have a square one, so I'm going to go like this around and I'll get back to you. I tapped it in lightly once, and then I'm putting it on the mold just to make sure it's where I want it before I start stabbing it in deeper. So I like where it is. You can kind of see it. So now I'm going to continue and make sure that this is in and it's not fluffy. So now this has already been nice and tightly felted, needle felted in. Just as a quick free tip, if you have any thin spots or light spots, little holes or anything, you can repair it a little bit by needle felting. You can just take some of the roving and you would just use your needle felting needle and foam underneath, and you can just sort of stab it and repair it. Next step, I'm going to take this sweatband, headband, I think that's what it's called, and I'm going to put it on the inside of my hat, and that will really help kind of firm up the hat. And you'll see the little roving needle felted on this side, but that's going to be covered. So I'm going to be securing it with a pin, and then I'm going to be cutting it to the right length. I'm not a very good sewer, so I pinned it very carefully, and I'm going to just be sewing this onto the felt rim here, just all around here. 2 stabs and a big old tangle later, I'm still here. I've got a little bit more to go. If you are a very good sewer, please look away, as you will probably cringe at my sewing skills. But if you're like me and you're struggling, I just wanted to show you how I'm trying to get through the little last bit. So felt is very forgiving in terms of sewing. So I'm just going to stab and then poke through the sweatband and just pull. And I'm just going to be doing that for a little bit more. You can kind of see I'm getting both here. Okay. All right, very slow, so we're going to go ahead and pause it again. The next part is very much improvised. Since I haven't really been shown how to do this properly, I looked at a few books and just bought some stuff and tried it. So it may not be exactly the best way, but it's one way. So you'll want to get some millinery wire from like some hat supply place. I bought a couple to just see what I need. This one's marked 19, 22, and this one's not marked, so it might be about 21. It's right about in the middle. It's going to partially depend on the thickness of your felt, because you need to be able to control it through the felt. So I'm going to go ahead and go with this one. And you also need a metal clasp to connect the ends at the very end. So I'll be putting it and then securing it, and then I'll be sewing it. So I went ahead and sewed around just to hold it in place so I can get the wire attached before I do the finishing touches. So you use a little, I don't know, metal thingamajiggy and you cut it just so you can slip both sides in. I took off a little bit of the wire cover, and I'm just going to slip it in this way, and then I'm going to go ahead and tighten it just a little bit so it stays. Before I sew this on completely, I'm going to needle felt it to help me kind of keep the brim looking neater. So I'm just gonna go around and needle felt this. And you can kind of see the difference right here versus right here. And that'll make it easier for me to sew. Okay, so now I'm going to sew the edges to secure the wire for good. And again, my sewing skills have a lot to be desired. So if you're good at sewing, you know what to do. If you're not, just take small, I guess, bits at a time and try to hold it in place. And we will be taking out this white one. I finished the stitching around here and the wire's inside, you can feel it. And I took out the white thread that you saw earlier. So before I put some shape to it, I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup work. So this is another good time if you see any weak spots to do a little bit of needle felting on it. So I will just sort of poke away and tighten this a little bit. I'm going to bend the wire a little bit to sort of shape my hat the way I want it. So you can just sort of try it on your head and see what kind of angle you like, but all you have to do is just sort of bend the wire and figure out what you want to do with the brim. And I will show you how to finish it in a few minutes. I'm going to apply a bit of a hat stiffener. I put some saran wrap on the mold to sort of protect it because it gets kind of sticky sometimes. So I'm going to take this confectioner's glaze and put a little bit in here. And then add some alcohol. I like it a little on the thin end since it's easier to apply more later. So I just mix. And I'll maybe test it on the back side real quick. And then I'll just start at the crown. If it doesn't dry and stiffen enough, just apply another coat, maybe a little thicker than you originally diluted it. And this will help stiffen it. And if you have enough alcohol, it won't make it sticky. So you do this, and then you just let it dry. You can also do it on the inside, but if you do it diluted like this, you can't really tell on the outside, and it usually ends up looking very nice. And here's the finished hat. And it's nice and sturdy.